Hey WC students, and welcome to Sermon Notes. It's Michelle and Floyd.
What's
and
up, guys?
I want y'all to know that we were both wearing navy, and he made me change.
Did, and I'm
So
not
wrong.
not ashamed of it. Not
You
ashamed
should
of it
be
at all.
so proud to be associated with me.
I don't like to match in person. I'm not gonna match on a video because everybody's gonna see that forever. So yeah, but we're glad to be here just to share a little bit about this week's psalm with you guys. In weeks previously, when we've been looking at psalms, we've always just kind of talked about specifically like how to for you guys to be leaning into the Lord and finding refuge in Him. And I think tonight Psalm 91 does a really interesting shift for us because it changes our focus instead of us thinking about just ourselves and how we're finding hope, but it's also about how we can help others find hope as well. And so when we're reading this today, we hope that you kind of get that picture that this is a season not just for you to be connecting with the Lord, but this is also a season for you to be helping your friends as connect to the Lord, and how important that is that our faith isn't just for ourselves, but it's also meant for us to be sharing with our friends and our family and those that we care about. And so in Psalm 91, you get this picture right at the beginning. He says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." And listen to verse 2. "I will say to the Lord, my refuge, my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." And so we see right early on that the psalmist believes in his hope. It believes his hope is in the Lord, and he is confident in what God is going to do. He calls him his refuge and his fortress. And I love this. He says, "My God, in whom I trust." And for us as Christians, as people who are trying to follow after Jesus, especially in a season like this, when there's a lot of things that we're unsure about, there's one thing that is sure, and that's the Lord. And so for this psalmist and for us, are we saying this is this our prayer? Is this our response to God, that you are our refuge and our strength, that you are the God in whom we trust? And so that's the first question you've got to ask yourself is, are you standing in that? Or if all the things that we've talked about in previous weeks, does this resonate with you, that you're like, man, I do trust the Lord. Like, I do think that He is going to protect me, even though I don't understand everything. I'm still going to believe, and I'm going to trust, and I'm going to follow Him. If that's you, then the next part of this is where you transition from thinking about just yourself, but someone else. Because for the psalmist, he switches. And he goes into this kind of like wisdom mode. And so he, instead of just talking in this first person, he's now moving into this third person, almost this rhetorical second person. What's the sense is like he is trying to encourage people around him to trust and hope in the Lord too. And he says in verse 3, so, "For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler, and from the deadly pestilence, and he will cover you with his pinions, and under his wing you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler." And I don't really understand what a buckler is, but I'm assuming it's some kind of buckle. Yeah, we'll go with that. But
like armor.
Armor, sure, we'll go with
Piece of
that.
armor.
Yeah, I'm so smart. But verse 5, guys, is where I think this really kind of settles in the psalmist in encouraging someone to trust the Lord. And he says, "You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrows that fly by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday." And this poetic sense of using night and day and darkness and noonday is just a sense that, like, man, they're fears. They're like legitimate fears that we're struggling with, and they're just not in one part of the day. They consume us all day, and it's not just us, but it's people that we care about who are probably afraid of what's going on in this world around us. We're probably afraid about other things that have nothing to do with COVID, but are still worried, and that the fear consumes them. But for the psalmist, he's saying we won't fear. And the reason we won't fear is because we, in verse 3, have been delivered, and in verse 4, He has covered us. And so my encouragement to you guys is that as you experience the Lord, you're sharing that experience with your friends. You're sharing that experience with your family. You're sharing that experience with people around you, giving them the hope that you have. Not that we're like not afraid ourselves or struggling with all of the uncertainty of this time that we're in, but we have this hope that goes beyond what we can see. And that's the encouragement that we're trying to give to other people as well, is that God is going to deliver, that he's going to cover, and that we don't have to fear, whether it's in the middle of the day and we're watching the news and seeing all the craziness, or if it's in the middle of the night when we're by ourselves and no one is around and we feel at our loneliest, that we are not alone, that God has covered and God will deliver. That's the encouragement we have for ourselves, and that's the encouragement we should be giving to the people around us.
Yeah, and I love how this psalm ends. You know, we were talking this week in Rhythms about just like meditating on one verse or one little phrase, and this one section really stuck out to me. We're going to go over all of it, but I don't know, it just kind of caught me as I read through it. In verse 14, it says, "Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." So here's like the Lord speaking about what he will do. And as we're trying to encourage our family and our friends and even our own hearts, the thing that stands out to me so much is the repetition. It's been a long day with those kids. The repetition of the words, "I will," right? Over and over again, God saying, "I will, I will, I will." And I think as we're talking to our friends and our family and they're trying to figure out this faith thing, there's this idea that like, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to get to the point where he's going to love me or care for me. And why would he protect me? Do you know my past? Or maybe they just doubt God's goodness. But as we look at these verses, we see that God is a good God. And it's not based on what we've done or who we are or anything like that. It's just based off of his character. Yeah. And the only thing he tells us is he says, because he holds fast to me in love. So that's saying like when a person turns to the Lord, then God is actively protecting. It says he's actively delivering, protecting, he's calling, or he's answering, he's there in trouble, he's rescuing and honoring. He's just so active. So it tells us to hold fast to him. So turn to the Lord and hold fast to him. And then in verse 15 it says to call to him. And I love that the actions for us are so small. He's been chasing after us and pursuing us. He desires to protect us and give us hope. He desires to do so much for us. And all he's asking is just turn to me. Yeah. Turn to me, and I'm going to be the one that's actively pursuing, actively protecting. Even just the fact that in verse 15 it says, I will be with him in trouble. As believers, it's not that there is a lack of trouble. You know, we know lots of wonderful people who are going through really hard times right now, and we ourselves have experienced very challenging times in our lives. So trusting in God doesn't mean that there's a lack of trouble, but it does mean that God is always present, that he is with us in trouble. And when you have trouble, it's not because you've deserved it or earned it. It's just part of our fallen world. Yeah. But the beauty is that our God is a redeemer who's going to be with us and walk with us in the midst of it. So if you have friends or family that are struggling, maybe it's COVID, but there's so many things going on in the world outside of that. That's just one thing that people are struggling with. Yeah. But if people in your life are struggling or they just don't understand the Lord and they don't understand this faith you talk about, show them that he is a God who wants to be there with them and walk with them in trouble, protect, deliver, honor. He is a good God. And even I just want to throw back real quick to verse 4 when it says he will cover you with his pinions and under his wing you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. I'm not really sure about buckler. We should have probably researched that. But I love this, that God... They can Google it. Yeah, you look it up. My dad used to say he's not a walking dictionary. We're not walking dictionaries. Not even close. No. But this idea that like you've got this like almost like a mother hen with the wings protecting, and there's like a nurturing kindness, a gentleness to it. But then there's also this shield that is strong and powerful. And I think that dichotomy of God being like nurturing and strong is hard for us to understand. So as you're talking to your friends or even you're considering the Lord this week, know that he's both. He's not just a soft God and he's not just a hard God, but he is somehow all things. Yeah. And so don't let that scare you away, and don't just grasp onto one side or the other or your friends, but encourage them to press in the fact that God can be both at one time. Yeah. So these are just our thoughts. Psalm 91. Yeah, well, we love you guys and are always here for you if you need us. Hit us up, call us, text us, FaceTime us if you just need to talk, or if you're thinking through all of this stuff and you just need somebody to process with. Michelle and I, and then the rest of our team are always available to talk with you guys. Yeah, we're eager to have adult conversation, and we just miss y'all so much. So if you call or text us, you are not a bother, but you are a blessing to us. We miss you, and we want to talk and catch up. Yeah. So holler at us anytime. But know that you are very loved and that we are praying for you, and we cannot wait to be reunited soon.
Yeah. Love you guys.
Love y'all.
See you soon.
Bye.